What's up? It's Mathew Blades, and I'm so excited for you to hear something today that I completely dreamed up 3 months ago. I was at a breakfast. It was a charity breakfast, and the executive director was on the stage and just wowing me with what they're doing at a place called the New Freedom Project, which, by the way, I will explain in the intro of the podcast today. So you'll get a firm grip on what these guys are all about. But I called her up after that breakfast and I said, "You're going to think I'm nuts, but here's what I envisioned." And she said, "Oh my God, I love it." So, not but a few weeks later, we went to the male facility at New Freedom Project on Wednesday night, and then the female facility on Thursday night. And what I'm getting ready to unveil to you, or what you're getting ready to listen to today, if you choose to, is the conversation that took place on Wednesday night with Cordero Holmes. And just really quick, if you like the conversation that we're getting ready to have with Cordero, you'll love the conversation we had with Lindsay Prue, which is the other podcast. All right, let's get to it. First voice you're going to hear is that executive director, Megan Murphy.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight for this very special recording of the Learn from People Who Lived It podcast. We have an awesome group of people that have put together a special night. So we'll do the podcast, filming, and then after that, we'll do a really cool workshop where you'll have the chance to talk and share and learn and connect. So we're really excited about that. And before I bring up our host for tonight, just want to let you know he has been envisioning this moment since he came to New Freedom. So we're really glad to see it all come to fruition. And with that, give a warm welcome to Mathew Blades.
What's up? Thank you. Just set it down there. Yep. That's perfect. Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, you can put it wherever you want. Thanks, Megan. Well, I'm excited to be here. As Megan said, I've been envisioning this for a few months. I'll tell you the story really quick, and then we'll jump into the why we're all here tonight. 3 months ago, I was invited to the gala that they had here. It was a breakfast. And I just remember sitting in the crowd and looking out at what was happening here. And Tracy was up on stage, and he was giving his testimony. And then they had a few other people that were on the stage giving their testimony. And it was like, there's magic happening here at New Freedom Project. There's literal magic happening here behind these walls. And when you think about the fact that this all started back in 2006, when a couple of guys who were behind bars decided to start pouring into each other and help raising everybody, and now it's turned into this unbelievable place, how could you not be inspired by it? And so after I was done, I called Megan on the phone and I said, "You're going to think I'm crazy. But when I was sitting in the crowd at your gala, I closed my eyes and all I could see was me doing my podcast with some special people in front of this group of men." And Megan was like, "You're not crazy. I love it." And we sat in her office and we chopped it up for about 30 minutes. And now we're here 3 months later, and we're going to record our podcast in front of you guys tonight, which is, as you mentioned, called Learn from People Who Lived It. My story, just super quick, just so you understand a little bit of the lay of the land, how we got here. I spent 28 years in radio and television, and 4 years ago, I walked away from that industry after what I think can only be called a mental health crisis for myself. And maybe tonight some of this stuff will come out, and maybe it's stuff that you relate to as well. But I had some demons from my past that had started to catch up with me. And it was really clear to me that I had to get a hold on those things, and I had to figure it out. And I'm proud to say that I did. I did go do the work. I walked away from that position, and I decided that I would use the skill set that I have, which is the ability to sit down with people and talk to them in a much different way. So I'm still doing what I love every single day, but now I'm just talking about shit that really matters and changes people's hearts and minds and lives in real ways. And so I'm very excited to be a part of this night tonight. I hope to continue to build this thing out. And as Megan mentioned, after we're done taping this podcast, we're going to facilitate a workshop. Won't be very worky, right? Like, I don't want anybody to freak out that we're gonna go down a big, deep rabbit hole tonight. But I'll introduce Dave here in just a second. We've created a protocol that I believe will be instrumental for people getting unstuck, for people that describe themselves as like, I'm in a rut or I'm in a funk or something just doesn't make sense. I think we've created something that will help people get to the other side. And so our goal tonight is to facilitate that workshop with you guys and be a little vulnerable. Like, we're in community, right? And I always say, when you're in my room, when you're in a room where I'm recording my podcast, this is a safe room. So we got to know that we can say what we need to say. We can do what we need to do. And if you're here in the spirit of making tomorrow better than today, you're in the right place. So that said, I want to introduce my partner, who is Dr. David Lycan. Dr. David Lycan and I came to know each other shortly after I left my position on the radio. He actually wrote to me on Instagram and he said, "Hey, looks like you're quitting your job. I'm thinking about doing the same thing." And I said, "This is good news. Let's get together and see what we can work out together." He is a board-certified psychiatrist, easy for me to say. He treats patients 21 and older. He specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder. But where Dave really shines is in his ability to identify patterns. And so with that, Dave, welcome to tonight's podcast from New Freedom Project.
Hello. So I'll talk a little bit about me for a second.
Yeah, please.
So I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. As Matthew said, we've known each other now for a couple of years. I've been kind of a regular on the Learn from People Who Lived It podcast. That's kind of my first efforts into doing public speaking and podcasting. And
we got Dave way out of his comfort zone tonight.
Yeah, so if I choke up on the mic a bit, this is not something I'm used to doing. But I've been a psychiatrist for, over 28 years. I worked at the VA for 24 years, working with folks that were dealing with various forms of trauma, a lot of military trauma, sexual trauma. And I think identifying patterns and helping other people to see patterns in their life is really the key to transforming. You know, if you can see a pattern, then you have the ability to predict the future, which is pretty cool. But it's not easy to do, and sometimes it's helpful to have other people kind of going alongside of you and kind of pointing out things, and sometimes even having a good friend or somebody who knows you well to kind of reflect back to you helps you to see some of those things. And if you see it happen now, you can see it happening in the future, and maybe get out in front of it and pick a different path.
Beautiful. We're not going to be just the two of us up here tonight. We have a really special guest that's going to be joining us here on Learn from People Who Lived It. He's one of the very few people that I'm going to be having back for more and more and more. When I left the radio, one of the things that I said to myself that I want to do, and by the way, guys, feel free to come on in and grab a seat and hang out with us a little bit tonight. There's some people hanging out toward the back for those of you who are just listening to our podcast. But I made a decision that I wanted to work with people that were incarcerated. And this stemmed from about 10 years ago. I was studying Buddhism, and the Geshe, who was working with us, talked all the time about how he would go into prisons and teach people how to meditate. And there was just something about what he was doing that made me feel like I need to do some of that too. I got to figure out how I can help out in that space too. And it's amazing how the universe, God, call it what you want, works out, because within a couple of days, I got a phone call from the Durango Detention Center, and turned out I knew a couple of people that were working there, and they said, "Hey, look, we've got this intercession work. Why don't you start coming in twice a year and pouring into these young kids?" And I've been there now for the last 2 years. And the very first day that I walked into Durango, I think we were walking in almost together. And it was really clear, I think, to both of us that there was a kinship there, and there was very much common ground. And so that is how I came to know our guest here tonight. I want to read a little bit about Cordero because it's a very impressive life that you've created for yourself, sir. He's a Phoenix native who spent 10 years in prison after being sentenced for robbing a bank. Fast forward to just a couple of years ago, he was honored with the Martin Luther King Jr. Living the Dream honor from the city of Phoenix. Just this year, he was presented with the Arizona State University Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Servant Leadership Award. He has a master's degree now that I believe he just collected or is about to collect. Is it gonna happen? It's almost there. And I can't wait for you all to hear about this man's life. Let's welcome to the stage Cordero Holmes. Cordero,
Yep.
How you been, man?
I'm doing great. When I first came in here, I was telling them I'm getting into wrestling, and I wanted like an entrance song. I remember I was thinking about, because I'm getting into wrestling now currently, I would have wanted like the Jey Uso, Like the yeet wrestling fans? No, okay. If not that, I would have went with if you smell what the rock is cooking. But, so next time.
It's good to have you here. I always wonder what it's like for you to be around this group of guys that you spent a lot of time with and for a good chunk of your life.
I spend time with guys who's been incarcerated every day. It feels like, and so whether it comes from relatives, the work that we do, we work with credible messengers. Credible messengers are individuals who have lived experience, who have successfully navigated, that space, probation, parole, the systems, and have gotten training and are now working with us, doing the work that we're doing with some of the young folks here in the city of Phoenix. And so I'm with y'all all the time.
Amazing. Well, with that, we're going to begin our podcast with three of us here tonight. And I want to say everybody that's here enjoying it live, thank you so much for being here. Everybody ready? Fire it up. Here we go.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, tonight we are at the New Freedom Project here in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is me, Dr. David Lykin, as always. How are you, sir?
Hello, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you here. And our guest today is a buddy of mine that I met at the Durango Detention Center. His name is Cordero Holmes, and you've heard him before on our podcast. We actually recorded our first podcast inside Durango Detention Center. And I knew in a moment, man, after you and I did our thing, that there would be more to come from the two of us. And
Absolutely.
So first up, thank you. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Thank you for being a part of this group tonight. I'm super grateful for what you bring to the table.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having this, and thank you for putting this together for us.
So, here on Learn, man, it's all about what I call the idea of the transitional character. Let me define that for everybody. The transitional character, as I can see, is the person who is sent here to end dysfunction for themselves and for the people in their lives. They come here and they know that there's more. There's something bigger than what's been happening for them so far. I love to tell the story about being 12 years old and sitting in my house in tiny Coon Rapids, Minnesota, and looking around my house and literally saying to myself, what the fuck is going on here? An alcoholic father, a mom who just screamed and hit. There was so much chaos. We had no money. It was just world that just made me feel like there has to be more than what I'm experiencing right now. And I tell everybody this. I also had a very loving mom and a very loving dad, but there's nobody in therapy because they got too many hugs. So, Cordero, you represent to me the transitional character. Like you embody that fully. You have, and maybe you didn't know it at 12 years old, but you know it now. You're the person here sent to end dysfunction and to make sure that everybody who has the name Holmes after you has a different look. How does that feel to wear that cape?
Well, first of all, the pressure, the way you put it, right?
No pressure at all. No pressure at all.
the pressure. But I mean, it's an immense responsibility that I think now at 37 years old, I most definitely take on, and I'm proud that I'm responsible for that. At 12 years old, I definitely didn't think that it was going to come to that. 12 years old, I was in the 7th grade. Just was on the cover of Sports Illustrated for Kids with Jason Kidd. Any Suns fans? All right, okay. If you're a Laker fan, get up out of here. Right. But and so I was. And so I just did. I was really into sports, but also too at the age of 12, I was really getting into the streets. My mother and father, right? They met while they were in the military, and so I was born in Fort Carson, Colorado Springs, Colorado. But not too long after that, I ended up coming here to the city of Phoenix because I am a native here, and I landed in the Cofield Projects on 19th Avenue in Buckeye. And so if anybody here is familiar with the city and just the landscape of it, I started participating in all the activities that occur in the area, the politics and whatnot. And so my mother, right, she gave power of attorney to my aunt, who then later on, right, came after active duty. And then we moved to like 23rd Avenue in Indian School, where in the 7th grade I was in what was called R.E. Simpson at the time. And so it was a totally different landscape. But I felt like because I came from where I came from, I had a little bit more lived experience. And I say that to say that I rode my bike everywhere. I rode my bike from the Cofell Projects to the Marcos on 7th Avenue, to the Boys and Girls Club off of 19th Avenue. And so I was everywhere. I was everywhere where I think that in the 7th grade where I was at, that wasn't really happening as much. And so I was really into sports. The only responsibility that I really wanted to take was to push that ball, because I was a point guard. I was really good too, and that was the only responsibility I thought I was going to do at that time, and I was going to have.
Yeah, well, I remember when we were chatting in the Durango Detention Center, you were talking about how good you were, and you talked specifically about a coach, who was really instrumental in your life.
My coach, Art Sanchez. I've since we had that conversation, I've looked for him a few different times on a few different social mediums, but I've yet to find him. But he was a branch manager at the Boys and Girls Club at Rosenswag, particularly, which is on 23rd Avenue, Missouri. But he later on became my 8th grade basketball coach because he became a teacher. And so I spent a lot of time with him, as you can imagine, from going to the club from the 6th grade, 7th, and then being in the classroom with him every day in the 8th grade. He left a lasting impact for sure.
What was it like in your house growing up? What was the dynamic like? What was mom, dad? What was that situation?
Well, I think this is pretty typical, right? It's kind of like, my pops was out there doing his thing. That's his story to tell. My mother, she married a Mexican national. His name's Mario. I think at that time it was so different. Coming from where I come from and being who I am and being in a household with him, I'm like, yo, bro, my daddy. My daddy. And he's like, oh, okay. Right? And my mom, she was working constantly. And so I had a lot of free time. And like, as I had shared, by the time my mother came back from active duty, I spent a lot of time with my aunt. And my aunt, she was dealing with her issues, and my uncle. So I pretty much had free reign to do what I wanted to do. And it's the reason why I was outside as much as I was.
What'd you do with all your free time?
Ride bikes, steal pit bulls, right? Remember what I'm saying? Right? Steal pit bulls, ride bikes, just hang out with my buddies. Play basketball, baseball, anything we could do to have fun. Yeah,
so I want to clarify one thing that I said a couple of minutes ago about the idea of being the transitional character. I can see where that would feel heavy for some people, right? I can see where that would feel like, whoa, like that's my huge responsibility. But Dave, I want your take on this really quick, because I feel like it actually makes my life easier. Because in these moments where I have to choose, do I go this way or this way, all I have to say is, what would the transitional character do? And then now the choice becomes really easy. I say, would the transitional character, would they hang on to all this old stuff? Would they continue to not forgive the person that wronged them or did them dirty or something like that? Or would they let that grudge go? Would they have that hard conversation with somebody they need to, or would they just keep quiet and stay angry? And so for me, in a lot of ways, the transitional character, Kate, feels like it makes life easier. And so Dave, I'd love your take on that duality of, is it harder or does it make it easier?
I think the default position is you do what you grew up with.
Okay.
And if you don't think about it, stop and question it, or make any attempt to try to change it in some way, you'll just go down the path that was laid out for you in one way or the other. And a lot of times people that grow up in abusive families, they find their way into becoming abusive to other people that are important to them. And the idea of the transitional character is, if the patterns that you've been following before aren't serving you well, and you decide, I want to make a change in this. And it's a process. It's not like a one and done sort of thing where you just say, oh, well, I'm not going to do a certain thing anymore. You have to make those little decisions, and even if you kind of go down the wrong path, to be able to come back to it again and say, you know what, I don't like where this is taking me. I want to do something different and transition to something else.
Perfect. I'll walk up to you, Cordero. So talk to us about the moment that you stepped into that role. What was happening? If memory serves, there was a solitary confinement story that you shared with me in Durango.
Yes.
That was a really big turning point for your life.
Well, even going back to 12 years old, it wasn't long after 12 that I started going in and out of institutions. I've been to Durango a multitude of times, been committed to Adobe, spent a year there where I got my GED, went to the county jail for like 6 months, started having kids, thought everything was gonna, I would make a transition because I'm a big boy now, right? But that's not what happened. I did the 10 years. I got sentenced to 10 and a half years at the age of 20. I went in when I was 19. And I mean, because we're here in New Freedom, you're familiar with just what the yard is like. And so I'm from the biggest black urban political organization that exists here in the state of Arizona. So when I went to prison, I had all those thoughts that a lot of y'all think, right? Like, oh, blood in, blood out, American me, light skin, long hair. It's gonna be tough for a brother, right? But I quickly realized when I got there, like, man, I know I got homies here, people that I haven't seen in a while, people I haven't seen, people that I've heard about in my community that I've yet to get to meet. Now I'm getting to see them, getting to meet them, and so I kind of just doing the same thing. Y'all know how it goes. I mean, I'm hustling, I'm chilling, working out, hanging out with the homies. I remember something I was told that really stuck with me was, by an older individual who knows me well, was that, hey, when you were young, your favorite movie is The Lion King. And I was like, yeah, this is when I was in the county jail getting ready to go to the yard. And he was like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna be Simba, you're gonna be Mufasa, or are you gonna be with them hyenas? It's like, yo, what is this fool talking about? All right, what are you talking about? It wasn't much after that as I sat there and pondered that I really got to see, right? You see them hyenas, remember they be like, laughing. Y'all know who them cats is on the yard, running around smoking cigarettes, drinking coffee, right? Hanging out with the homies. Or are you gonna be the Are you gonna be the lion? You gonna be the Simba, Mufasa? Remember when they said Mufasa's name? It was like Mufasa. So, ooh. So he was just telling me like, yeah, because this individual been to the yard too. He was like, man, you're gonna run with the homies? You're gonna run with the homies, do stupid stuff, or are you gonna get there and you're gonna run your own program? What's it gonna be? And so I went in with that, got there, seen all my homies, and I was a hyena for the first part of my time. And as y'all know, when I went in there, it was 2009 when I hit the yard. Landed in Cheyenne, was there for a little bit, caught a couple fades, went to Maury for a little bit, got into some issues there, caught a couple more fades with some some more stuff. Went to what was it, Cimarron? Not Cimarron. Went to Reining Unit. We was there. This is during the time where I think the white dudes had broke out of Kingman, like 2010. And so they moved everybody. At that time, they were moving everybody to Yuma. And so a lot of cats from like Buckeye, from Buckley had went out there. We landed in Dakota, so it was a new yard. I spent like 3 years there. And again, this is during a different time, because I don't know what it's like now. I've been out of prison since 2007. I went back in 2019 for a violation. But at that time, everything was segregated by race. And again, I come from the largest black urban political organization here in the state of Arizona. So, I'm sitting at the table with the brothers. And, you know how it goes. Stuff happens. Everybody got to handle it. The yard goes up. The yard go up. I don't get beat up. I've been there for a while. Big light-skinned cat, long ponytail. Got to go. So the solitary confinement then came. So I got maxed out, went to the hole in Dakota, got maxed out, was sitting in Central Unit for about a couple years. And then I remember when they first closed the door in Central Unit. If you've been to Central, if you've been to the walls, you understand it. The walls are like yellow. It's white, but it's like somebody had just been spitting loogies on the wall. And I remember the smell of the individual that just left, because somebody just left the cell before I got in there. And I was in CB 5 George 4. And I remember going in there. Y'all know how small it is if you've been there. And I remember having a panic attack. Like, I've never had a panic attack, nothing. The doors closed. I got loose. I sat on a stump that's right there, and I'm like, yo, I'm gonna have to be here for, at that time it was typically when you get maxed out, you're there for like 2 years. I'm like, 2 years is crazy. But I had a panic attack, and I remember telling myself like, hey man, like tighten up. And I tightened it up. But during that time, in the beginning, my beginning time in Central Unit, I was extremely depressed. I was just like, I was a mess. I couldn't help but to think about my upbringing, right? All the elders that poured into me, my aunts, my uncles, some of the older G homies who real G homies, right? Who were really lacing you and wasn't, sending you off to go do dumb stuff. And I think about my mother. I think about my children, because I got 4 children. I think about how many people I disappointed, and that really affected me. And I knew that I got to do something different. Right? I had to keep it a band with myself. Like, at this point, based on where I'm at right now, I might be cool and I might be dope to everybody on the yard, right? When you go to max, you like, all right, I'm kind of like the worst of the worst, right? I've reached the top of the bottom, I like to say. But it's kind of like a pride that come with it, like, man, I got the whooping stuff on that ride. Like, they was like, man, we got to get him away from here. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm a deadbeat, right? I'm not taking care of my kids. I got 4 kids. Like I'm a horrible son to my mom. Like, my mom didn't teach me this. My aunts, all my elders, like, I mean, look how I'm acting. Like what would they think? And so it was really there where I was like, man, I got to make a change. I got to do something different. And so then it was there in Central Unit that I really started delving into books. I was doing a lot of reading already, but it gave me the opportunity to kind of broaden my perspective, right, and see things that were outside of the community, like you had just talked about, Doc, that I was used to seeing. I was used to seeing crack being sold. I spent a lot of time behind the Capitol, too. That's where I'm from, technically. And so I'm right there on Van Buren, so I'm seeing a lot of sex work happening. These are things that I'm used to seeing. Listening to Brother Lynch, right? Listening to the 50 Cent, not Power 50 Cent. I'm talking about 50 Cent, Get Rich Doctrine. This is the type of stuff I'm listening to. Listening to a lot of East Siders, like, like the Crip Hop music. And so this is what I remember. But then I started delving into books. I started seeing different things. I started looking at pictures first, right? I'm like, man, look at Thailand. It's dope out there. Look at China. Like, these are places I want to go. And then reading about people who have lived something similar to what I have lived, but we're doing different things now. And I'm like, oh, I could do that too. And so that's really where it started at, and the transition began to happen. And because you're on the yard, y'all know how it go. Some stuff had happened, some stuff had occurred. It was like some craziness had happened. I ended up catching another case, or ended up catching another ticket, going to SMU2 for a little bit. And so I had to go sit down at SMU2 for a bit before I came back. And so altogether, I did 3 years in Central in SMU2.
I want to ask Dave about this idea of isolation, right? Like when you go into Max and you're there by yourself, right, Cordero? It's just you, me, myself, and I hanging out for a couple of years or however long it was. So what does isolation do to the brain? What does it do to our minds and our psyches? Because, I think, not everybody's been to prison, but boy, COVID sure did put a lot of people in isolation. And so maybe people listening to this podcast are like, well, I can't relate to going to jail and being in Max, but I can relate to being alone and by myself and not having contact. And so what will happen to the brain without the stimulation of community?
First of all, you have no distractions, so you're stuck with your own thoughts, for better or for worse, right? Definitely. And one of the things that jumped out at me when you were saying that is, you can know that you want to make a change, and you could see things that you want to not have in your life anymore, but it's hard to figure out what to do with that then. And I think that's where people get stuck is maybe wanting to change things, but then not knowing how to do it, and then just kind of giving up and going back into the old patterns again. So you threw yourself into reading. I think that's a great way to at least get some different perspectives, and I think you almost have to try on some different things and kind of see what path forward fits for you.
Yeah, I would. As far as like trying it on, I don't know. It was like people ask me like if I had a recommendation, if I could recommend a book to somebody. Every time, 100, 10 out of 10. It's an autobiography of Malcolm X by Alex Haley. And so I think that was probably the first thing I've ever tried on, and I've been wearing it ever since, because I really got to see how important knowledge itself is. I mean, if you're not familiar with the story of Malcolm X, it's Malcolm Little. Grew up in Arkansas, come from a good home. Dealt with some racism at that time. Later went on to commit crime, burglarize, pander women, things like that, and then went to prison. He got sentenced to 10 years as well, but he didn't do 10. But while he was in there, he got introduced to the Nation of Islam through an individual who was sharing with him, just about being him, like being a black man at that time. And so, everybody who was here that's familiar with just the system, when you go in there, when it's segregated by race, you get into your culture. Right? If you're Mexicans, you learn about the Azteca culture. If you're Native, you get deep into your indigenous tribes, or I think a lot of time the focus is on like the Plains Natives, and you go to Sweat. If you're white, right, you tap into your Irish heritage, German heritage, etc. And if you're Black, right, you learn about the motherland. And so that's stuff that I was kind of going through and I was doing, right, it was during that time it was a quote that I had read from Jose Rizal, who was a Filipino revolutionary, and it says no history, no self. No history, no self. And so it's a play on the word no, like K-N-O-W, no history, no self. No history, no self. And it was there where I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to know who I am, because I seen that this was a catalyst for Malcolm. And so I'm like, okay, I'm learning. And in that too, it's also, you're incorporating some spirituality, right? I'm reading some Buddhist books. I'm reading scriptures. I'm reading the Quran. So I'm looking for that to fill that void, right? And so go ahead, Doc.
But you know what you're saying though is past predicts future, right? So, and it doesn't necessarily have to be your past. It can be your past. But if you learn from somebody else's past and look, you know, where certain decisions they made and where that ended up for them, it gives you an opportunity to kind of see a different way other than what you experienced from childhood.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to them patterns, being able to identify those patterns that you had talked about at the beginning of the podcast, right? That's what I saw. I'm like, okay, this is where you make the turn. This is where you change, right? This is where you become, right, that transitional character. And yeah, that's it. And so I think one of the things that I did while I was in solitary confinement that I'm glad I did was read a lot of policy. And so that later on turned into something, too, when I got out of solitary confinement and went back into the general population.
It's an impressive story for so many reasons, but your educational path begins while you're incarcerated. You enrolled at Rio Salado College, where you earned multiple degrees, including certifications in addiction, substance use disorders, an associate in applied science, an associate in the arts with an emphasis in psychology. And then after your time at Rio Salado, you continued your education at Arizona State University, where you earned a bachelor's degree in public service and public policy. And then you are currently pursuing a dual master's degrees in criminology and criminal justice and public administration. That's fucking impressive. Like, it really is. I know, give it up. Like, it's unbelievable what you do. And I'll tell you, Cordero, I probably said this to your face, but I'll say it here in front of everybody else too. One of the most powerful things I ever heard you say in a group of people was, it's an information gap.
Yeah.
End of discussion. We all make the choices we make, as you said, Dave, based on what we know. Mm-hmm. And if we can learn different things, then we have an opportunity to grow. Yes. It's the catalyst for me starting this podcast, Learn from People Who Lived It, because I just don't believe that you have to have letters after your name to be smart. You are, Dave, both ways, right? But I just don't believe that that's true. I believe that we could sit down with just about anybody in this room, and they could share their story with us, and somebody would learn from that story. And that's why we're here, right? Because I know that there's value in Cordero's story.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what we find a lot, and we talk about this on the podcast, about introducing mindfulness, right? So deliberately taking time to kind of sit, be quiet, take some time to reflect on things, right? So most of us are too busy. Most of us are distracted by our phones. Most of us are distracted by things in life. And you have to like go out of your way to turn everything off and quiet everything down and deliberately take some time to just sit with your own thoughts. The question is, being forced to do that by being in solitary, did you find that gave you a lot of space that you weren't expecting to kind of go into things? Because you're there just with your thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. In the beginning, I think that's what caused a lot of like the cause of depression initially, because then I'm not being distracted by anything that's going on in the yard, right? And you know, a lot of times when you get transferred to another unit, you got to wait like a week, 2 weeks, especially when you're in Central, and it was just a riot. It was a few different riots that had occurred during that time, so it was a lot of people coming to the hole in Central. And so we were waiting probably like 3-4 weeks just to get our property. But that's all you really need when you're sitting in a cell, right? And So now I have there's no social influence, Eric, because everybody's there. Didn't really want to, at that time too, with certain things that was going on at that unit, at that particular building, that you just had to be cautious of, like, you were speaking to. And so I didn't speak to anybody in the event, but I was, it was that mindfulness of that month, right? Initially, it was like, that's when I really delved into myself. Like, what am I doing? Who am I? Right. How many people did I disappoint? Well, this is where I'm going to. So then what happened is I get my stuff and I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling better, right? Getting better, feeling better. But then you get tired of watching all the same stuff on TV, and you turn it off. I started reading more, and I really felt like I was really retaining a lot of the information, and it turned into a great thing. I think that. I mean, I know a lot of people, but I mean, I was probably one of the best to do it, even after that. And so, because I kind of felt like it put me on a reset, right? It put me on a reset, and even to the point, like when I got out, even when I came home, I was able to do Rio Salado College. I was able to do the asynchronous learning at Rio. Because I had that attention span, right? A lot of people were like, "Man, how are you able to go to school and teach yourself at Rio?" It's because I did 3 years at the Hole. That's why. But I would say this too: after going to school at Rio Salado College and acquiring those scholarships, and then later on transferring to Arizona State University, I definitely needed that at that time. Because the longer you stay out here, the more you become distracted, whether it's through Instagram or Facebook, whatever you're into, and then your family and stuff like that. I definitely needed it at that time. And so you have to consistently work at it like a muscle. And I'm probably getting a little. I'm not as good as I used to be. I would say that. So.
Well, you're busy. You've been dual masters takes a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question, and if I go into a space that you're not comfortable talking about,
I'm cool, man.
Just tell me to shut up.
Shut up.
I want to know how you. I want to work through a few things. I want to work through amends. I want to work through forgiveness. I want to work through humor. I want to work through expectations. What did amends look like to you? I say that word, and I'm just curious what that meant for Cordero Holmes.
Amends, right? Amends to me was really the people that are the most important, right? My children. I had to make amends with my children because, they didn't ask to be here. They didn't ask to be here. My oldest son, Cordero, he was born 14 ounces and 12 inches. He was 12 inches long, and so his mother was 24 weeks when she had him. I remember, and I'll share this story. I'll share this story because I remember thinking, just like, as a young man, right, having children, my kid, it's my firstborn, wanting to be strong, like ox strong, and I'm like, man, he's in the hospital. This is my thinking at the time, right? I'm so lost, and my thinking was so erroneous for sure, and I know that now, but at that time, that's what I thought, like, my son got to be strong, right? But he was 14 ounces and 12 inches long. I couldn't help but to feel like it was something wrong with me. And so even as I went through the process and I went to prison, it was a time where he came to visit me. He was about to come visit me. And there's a few different things going on with Cordero. He has his left hand is kind of formed in a weird way. Currently he's 19 years old, and he's 5 feet tall, and he's 104 pounds. So he's not like the average height of a kid. I think at that time he was probably like 6 or something. But I remember him coming to visit me, and I remember staring at him, staring at him. He's also on the spectrum. And maybe I didn't know that I was staring at him, but I felt that he felt like, man, what you looking at, fool? Like, man, why you looking at me like that? And but he looked at me, and I felt that from him, and he sat on my lap. And it was kind of like he chose me, because I wasn't based on everything I just shared with you. I was like, man, I don't know, this is my son, but maybe something's wrong with me. But yeah, he sat on my lap. And he chose me, and that was really kind of me recognizing, like, man, that stuff don't matter. And he's really been everything to me now. And so when I think about strength, I think about my 14-ounce son, right, who was 24 weeks when he came here, and has just graduated high school at Maryville a couple weeks ago. Speaks Spanish, speak Autumn, which is our indigenous language, and speaks English. And so it's strength. So sometimes this is me making amends, right, with my children. Boom. I got 3 other children, just me just kind of getting to know them. And I will share with you all. So a lot of y'all are dealing with stuff that you probably are just getting introduced to, right? Never really do. And I'm telling you, the biggest thing that you're gonna have to deal with is relationships. The relationships that you have with your kids, the relationships that you got with your parents, your significant other. These are the things that you're gonna have to navigate that are gonna be the most difficult for you. And so that was amends meant to me. And I would even share this too, if I can.
Please.
So going back to parents, right? I got out of prison, right? Got a job. I was working at a stucco plant for like 5 years. And during my time I was on parole, of course, you got to do community supervision. Community supervision, I think, is 15%. Tracy said 50% community supervision. And so after doing 10 years, I got to do a year and a half on parole. I get all the way to the last 3 months, and one of my relatives, he hit me up. He called me. He in Tucson. I got out from Cimarron. He was in Rancon. And he like, yo, what's going on? I'm like, man, bro, I got an apartment, right? I got my kids. I got custody of 2 of my kids. I got credit. I got a job. I ain't never had a job. I ain't never did any of that. And he was like, man, that's dope, man. And we've been chopping it up. And, my parole officer hit me up not too long after that, like, hey, come visit me. And I was like, what? This is, really Nipsey Hussle. I don't know if y'all familiar with Nipsey Hussle. Nipsey Hussle got a song. He said, your PO call you up, that's a trap, right? So I was like, I was gonna have to call my mama. I said, hey, mama, I don't know what's gonna happen. I might need you to take the kids. I told my boss, whatever, right? I ended up going over there. Sure enough, they was like, hey, you were talking to somebody in prison. One of the stipulations of your probation, you can't talk to nobody in prison, on parole, in jail, a gang member, a suspected gang member, and that's pretty much everybody I know. Everybody that's a part of my family, this is what it is. And so they ended up violating me. They violated me my last 3 months. I went to Red Rock. And so, but I tell you all that to say that, when you go to that parole board, at this time, I was going to school. I was going to school at Rio Salado College, and I found out that I had a 4.0 GPA, which means that I had all A's, right? I got that from an academic advisor. I got another letter from Corde's PCP, right, who was saying that, Corde has made these strides since Cordero has been home. He's a fantastic father. I also had some assistance from the state who they were providing me with a nurse, and I hate to call her that, she's no longer here, but this is my son's grandma, really, because she's been there from the beginning. And so she wrote him a letter and talked about all the, the strides that Cordero was making. But the letter that meant the most to me was a letter that I got, a letter that was sent in from my mom, because your mama know who you are, right? And so my mom wrote in the letter, she's like, Cordero's been in and out of jail since he was a kid. I didn't know what he was gonna do when he got out from doing 10 years. But I seen Cordero get out. I seen him pay his fines. I seen him purchase a vehicle. I seen him take care of his kids, get his kids, go to court for his kids. And for you to lock him up for talking to his relative, talking to my nephew, is wrong. And then I really feel, if we never had that conversation, my mom, again, I'd share what she did 22 years in the military. So she's kind of like high-strung, nothing. Right? She's kind of like stoic, everything. Like, you think about like Native, indigenous woman, she's the picture that you envision. But that was the most. And so if we never had that conversation, we definitely made amends in that letter. Like, I seen that she saw me. And, that meant the world to me.
Can I ask you a question about
Yes.
that? When they told you were going back for those 3 months, did you fight feeling bitter about it? And how did you manage with that? How did you not become bitter over that?
I'm hella bitter.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So, even now, I'll share this link. It's a documentary. I was featured in a documentary called Being Free. And it was a brother that I got the opportunity to hang out with. His name is Nunu. He got the restaurant in New Orleans. And one of the things he said is, man, you either gonna get better or you're gonna get better. That's what he said. He sounded like that too.
Because bitterness can eat you up. Yeah. That's why I'm asking.
Well, see, check this out. So after I got out from doing that 3 months, right, I understood that the system don't give a fuck about you. Not that I needed much I needed to be told that, more, because I knew it already, but I knew, you know what, this is what I'm gonna do. So I got out 4.0 GPA. I joined the premier honor society on the community college level called Phi Theta Kappa, did my thing there, started really grinding, got involved in community work, got introduced to Superintendent Hoffman, who was the top educator at the time, joined a council called the Indian Education Advisory Council for the state of Arizona, did that. Also got involved with the Maricopa Council on Black American Affairs, where it was an employee organization through the Maricopa Community College District, and then also got involved with the CASI, which is the Computing Alliance for Hispanic Serving Institutions at the University of Texas El Paso, where we help develop a curriculum for young people, who are Hispanic. And so I feel like instead of me getting bitter, or I use my bitterness, right, to really fuel me, right? And so it was really my gas. Right. And so that drove me to get better, right, as Nunu would say.
Right, so you didn't change off of the path that you were on. I think that's the important thing.
No, definitely did. I think another great story about that was my academic advisor. She was like, Cordero, and she waited all the way until I graduated. with my associates at Rio, was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't think you were gonna do it. Like, she was like, I'm gonna keep it real. I didn't think you were gonna do it. But I stayed on the course.
I've heard an equal story, similar to what you just said about being bitter and using that as fuel, about guilt. And I've heard people say, like guilt and shame are pretty useless emotions. But then I was talking to this guy one time, and he was like, I actually use guilt as fuel. Like, the things that I feel bad about, they're my fuel to make sure I never do them again, or that I make changes. And so I think just about anything can be used, good or bad. One of the things I was wondering about as you were giving that answer to Dr. Dave was, how long, and maybe it's still happening, and maybe all of us experience this on some level, do you still feel like you got to prove yourself?
To my kids, to my kids for sure. I live for the words from my children's mouth. Like, man, did a good job, Dad. Now, I get so many awards, they get tired of telling me that now. Like, oh, here we go again. But when I get that, that's what I live for. Like, you did it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about forgiveness, right? Yeah. And I don't necessarily want to talk about forgiveness for other people or some of that stuff. I'm like, how did Cordero forgive Cordero?
I think I've always kind of been I've always been the hardest with myself, but I believe the most gentle as well. And what I mean by that is I give myself grace for sure, but I go the hardest on myself. I would call myself all kinds of names, right? But I also know, like, man, you got to give it up. Like, give it up, man. Keep on pushing. And so I think it was easy for me to forgive myself. But at the same time, again, this goes back to the fuel. I use that to do the work that I do. I love the work that I do. I love the community service that I do, the work that I do with the youth, the work that I've done with the unhoused population in the zone when the zone was going on. I've definitely forgiven myself, though, and I just use it to fuel, because I understand that a lot of people are in situations. Well, I'll share this, right, because this is what I realized. It doesn't matter where you're at, whether you're in Scottsdale, whether you're in Scottsdale or Paradise Valley, right, in one of those zip codes, or you're in the LULACs on the south side, right? We all, as human beings, go through this experience with life, feeling emotions, feeling happy, feeling sad, right? Being disappointed, disappointing others. And I realized quickly that, you know what, I want to be that person that I needed, whether it's with the young people that I'm working with, or anybody that's going through stuff. I may not know what your experience is like, directly, because I haven't experienced it, but I know the feeling that you feel, because I've felt it before in a different way. And so I just really want to be that person.
I love that so much. I'm writing it down. How do you, and I'm really challenging the people that are not just in this room but are listening to this podcast, how do you turn into the person that you needed for yourself? Because to me, that's where the change comes in, right? If I can be the person that I needed, then maybe what I'll do is prevent somebody else from making my mistakes or something like that. You have a thought on that, Dave?
No, I mean, you'll find the people that are coming up behind you
closer.
you'll find the people that are coming up behind you that are going down the path that you had gone. And if you hit a dead end with it, and you're in an opportunity to direct them into something better, it kind of brings it all around full circle. I mean, some of the negative experiences, then you have a way to be able to use that for something positive. Yeah. It's not a wasted experience.
I got a couple of more questions that I want to ask, and then I want to wrap, give people a break, and then kind of work through a sequence with them to I don't know what the goal is, but to change hearts and minds. That's the goal always, right? Talk about expectations. I think that when you make a big life transition like you've made in your life, there's expectations placed on you, and then there's the expectations that you have on how people are going to treat you or interact with you. And so I'm curious about your viewpoint on that word, expectations. And so maybe we start with the first part. What did you expect from the world when you made this transition in your life? What did you expect that it was going to look like? And then how close was the actual reality?
Okay, go to expectations. I really had none. I had none. I got out of prison. I remember you guys hear those stories when you're on the yard, right? It's like, man, when I get out, I'm gonna have a big old house, or I'm gonna get an Escalade. Some of them already talking about they had that stuff. No, they lying, right? But yeah, right, stories. But I remember like having those conversations with fellas, and they were like, "What are you gonna do, Cordero?" And I was like, I'm gonna go to school and I'm gonna take care of my kids. And I had a homeboy that just hit me up. He's in Buckeye right now. And he was like, man, I remember, man, that's all you said you was going to do. And you've done so much more. And so, yeah, school and really kind of being in that proximity, right, with other people that develop that social capital, right, and the people who place you in these certain positions, that's really what kind of got me on the road, because that's all I ever wanted to do, was to be able to be financially stable and be able to assist my kids in the way that I wanted to, in the way that they wanted to be assisted, which is kind of a problem. You got kids, right? But also, just go to school. And so now, I'm pretty much it. I'm almost done. I'm going to be a doctor in a few years, and I got to figure out something else to do.
I love that, man. It's really just it's an incredible story. What do you think about, Dave, when and I think the question that I want to ask you both, and Dave, go first. Is it ever too late?
It's never too late.
Expand on that a little bit. So
everybody gets to the point that they're at their own pace. And, as they say in recovery circles, you're not ready to make a change until you hit bottom, but then everybody has a different bottom. So you don't really know what it's going to take for things to turn around, but I don't think it's ever too late to change. I think where people get stuck is change oftentimes is very slow. It's slower than people are patient to deal with. It's easier to do things that are right in front of you instead of sticking to like a long-term principle. But it's never too late to change. You can make little changes and just do little things consistently over time. And when you look back at some point, those little things are going to actually add up into something big.
Cordero, same question for you, man. Is it ever too late?
No, it's never too late. I think it's never too late to change. It's about quitting. Once you quit, it's over. Once you quit, it's over. Some people say they quit, but they really just, they tired. And that's different than quitting. But when you quit, it's over.
Well, quit and do what, right? A lot of times when people say I quit, that means they're just staying in the same old patterns, right? They're not doing anything different necessarily.
That's part of it, right? And you don't want nothing else except for what it is that you got going on. And so, when you quit it, it's over. And so you just got to keep on going. Whether if you need a break, take a break. Take a nap or something. Go do something for a little bit. Come back. If you're an artist, right, put it down. Go to work. Play some basketball, get another hobby, but always come back to this picture. I had read somewhere about an artist, right, who had, I wish I remember his name, but he talked about a piece of art that he put together and came back to it 10 years later and sold it for like thousands of dollars because he just didn't, he didn't quit. He probably thought like, I'm over it. but he went back to it. And so, yeah, it's never too late to change. Never too late to change. You got to take small steps every single time.
I want to ask you about humor. It's Dave and I put it in our protocol because I think humor is an underutilized emotion, and it's an underutilized tool in many people's toolboxes. And so I'm wondering how humor has been instrumental in your life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I come from an indigenous family and a Black and indigenous family, so we're extremely humorous. Everything is funny, but I think that after you go through the stuff that you go through, you gotta laugh at it. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't really take myself too serious. Even after these couple of masters and his doctorates, it's still kind of funny to me that I made it this far. That's how humor works.
Dave and I often talk about it, about how it's not just about your ability to laugh at other things, it's that ability to laugh at yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And not take yourself so seriously.
I can find funny situations just about anywhere.
Yeah.
I could be in the ICU room with somebody and still find something humorous.
Right.
It's a time and a place, though.
For sure. Yeah. You got to watch where you crack the jokes.
Yes, exactly.
But I do believe that, especially as it relates to trauma and especially as it relates to healing yourself, like sometimes the best thing you can do is just laugh at your situation and just go, what am I doing here?
No.
Like,
even just for the irony of it, like,
yeah.
How the hell?
Right. And then it gives you the ability to move on. I had a healer one time tell me, you're going to laugh or you're going to cry, but it's got to come out.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come out, it stays inside. And what stays inside gets stuck, and what's stuck turns into disease. And this is what's happening to people in our culture right now. Yeah. We've lost the ability to communicate with one another, and we are keeping more in than ever, which is why we are noticing more sickness than ever. We're noticing more cancer than ever. We're not just on the cancer spectrum. Sore knees, sore backs, sore everything. And it really boils down to this stuck energy that we keep inside of our bodies that we don't release. This is the power of talking to a counselor, talking to a friend, laughing about it. I appreciate Cordero getting emotional tonight, telling a couple of these stories, right? Like clearly that's emotional intelligence, the fact that you sit there and you cry in front of all of these people. You're still healing from it. And that's what that shows me. And that's what we need. We need to laugh. We need to cry, but it's got to get out.
Well, you can't be angry when you're laughing.
It's tough.
I mean, it just stops it right then and there. And once you're unstuck, then you can start looking for that path forward. That's the other piece of it. If you stay in anger, you're just kind of in this isolated ball, just kind of stewing, but you're not problem solving. You're just kind of stewing over whatever it was that happened. But if you can kind of laugh and release it, then it kind of puts you on the path of saying, okay, so all right, this is a crazy situation. Now what? How do I start moving forward from here?
Okay. I want to give a couple of people a chance to ask any questions that you might have here, but I do have one last question for you, Cordero, before we wrap up tonight. And I sent this to you last night because I wanted you to be thoughtful about your answer. I texted Cordero last night and I said, all right, buddy, I'm going to give you the last word tomorrow to end our podcast. And what I'm going to say is, Cordero, I want you to give these guys in front of us a call to action. What's one or two things that you have learned in the last 5 years that would be good for them to know?
He sent that to me, but I was asleep. And I was asleep most of the day today, too. So, if it's a few things that I can share with you that I've learned is, going back to what you had just shared, don't take yourself too seriously. Check your expectations for sure. And laugh at yourself. Everything that we just talked about right now, be able to do all of that because it's going to be tough. Again, I had shared some of y'all you're going to do stuff that you've never done before. I've never had a job. I never had a job before being released from prison. My job was in the kitchen. My job was grounds crew. My job was a barber. That's all I knew. Getting paid 50 cents tops. Are they still paying 50 cents? Is that tops? Yeah, like that was it. I never had a job. I've never worked anything. I had to get a job. Understand that people are gonna look at you because they're gonna think that you're gonna revert back to your old ways. And I know I've come in contact with a lot of people who are extremely bothered by that. Don't be, because everything that you've done and is what they know. Show them something different. And just know that, man, you gotta give yourself grace. Going back to grace, you gotta give yourself grace. And so be mindful of I will also share, be mindful of the people that you're around, because the people around are gonna put you in places that you never thought you were gonna be at. Me going to college, I would have never, if I wasn't in an institution, right, I would have never got the opportunity to go to Durango. I never went to Durango. I never would have met Mathew. I never would have been on this podcast. If it wasn't for institutions, I never and people at those. I never would have worked with this top educator in Arizona at the time. And so don't be scared to do different stuff. Throw yourself out there. I like to say that, nobody is born, right, saying like, I'm gonna kick this door down and go get the stuff. You gotta when you first commit crimes, you gotta talk yourself into it. Hey, let's do it, man. Come on, Cordero, you're gonna do it. Don't be, because your homies will be like, quit being a buster. Let's do it, because they scared too though. But they build themselves up to go and kick the door down or do whatever they're gonna do negatively, right? You gotta build yourself up. And so it's like, man, you say, man, fuck it. And then you do it, right? Man, take that same mentality and say, man, fuck it. I'm finna enroll in college. I'm gonna be a college student. And fuck it. I'm finna put in for this job, right? It says director with $100,000 annual salary. Why not? Let me see if I'm gonna get it.
Worst thing they can do is say no, right?
Yeah, fuck it, right? And so I'll share that. Yeah, let's use fuck it positively.
That's so good. That's so good. I want to give anybody who feels like they want to a chance to ask a question. And there's a microphone right there on the top of that speaker, if you don't mind speaking into it, because we're recording this podcast so that the audience can kind of hear it too. What's your name?
My name's Carrie Ann. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for taking the time to come out here and to pour into us. And I'm really, really grateful. And your vulnerability had me choked up. And I felt it, and probably two different paths totally, but everything was still the same. And that's beautiful. And I want to thank you, and I'm excited that this is something that you guys are going to do here. And I'll just leave with saying that one of the things that Dr. David said that was really powerful is that that forgiveness, when we stop and we're pouring into somebody else, it is full circle, and that's where that healing begins. And that there is no waste. There is no waste. Everything that's ever happened to any of us in this room can be a lesson for the next. And thank you for reminding me of that. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, I have a comment for that too. Vulnerability, and I think the same is true for secrets. If you lead with vulnerability, it all of a sudden stops becoming a vulnerability, right? If you talk about something that you're struggling with, who's going to use that against you then? You've already put it out in front of you. Like, is somebody going to criticize you for it? You already acknowledge that you're struggling with it, right? So you can get a lot of power just by embracing the situations that you're struggling with, and kind of lean into the struggle. Lean into like, hey, this is a work in progress, and I'm not where I want to be, but it's okay. Every day is a little better.
Anybody else? Yeah, feel free to grab that microphone. What's your name, man?
My name is Darvell. So I got a question for you. What made you told your first lie?
Say that again?
What made you told your first lie? Like, what made you want to lie your first time?
I can't even remember back that far. I think I've been but probably because I didn't want to get whooped.
So it comes to you. So I think I told my first lie out of fear. I was afraid. And that's why I was asking you as a doctor, like, in that moment, that puts us in defense mode, right? So a lot of us, and I speak for myself, I use the I statement, a lot of the fear to be liked, to be accepted. And then, like you say, some people that's in gangs, some people that's in politics, they tell that lie to be liked within that gang or to be accepted. So my hardest thing is letting go of my past, attachment, adapt to something. I want to keep going back to the neighborhood. I want to keep being liked. And I think it came from, I was adopted at 5. and I was raised under a Caucasian household. And then my biological mother got me back, and now I'm at like 13, and I don't want to be in that household. So my brother was hung 5 months later, and I just wanted to stay in that. My mom moved from South Phoenix, West Phoenix, way to Surprise, Arizona. I still found a way to get on that Valley Metro. It took me damn near 3 hours to get back to this side of town. And it was just to be that the acceptance of that brotherly love, and that would be the big homie, the OGs would be the dad. So my hardest thing right now is detaching from that. I'm not focused about the money and all that type of stuff. I want to know what are some steps that I can take to help me heal in them areas that's real great, which would be trauma, and detachment and stuff like that.
Can I jump in really quick and then go jump in? Here's what I want to say. I had to deal with this too because I had to erase some environmental factors from my life. I feel like I needed to detach from certain people, seemingly people as close to me as my mom, right?
Yeah.
Had to take some space away from that relationship. And I had a really brilliant healer one time say, letting go isn't the same as I don't care. So let me say that again. I believe that you can let go of things and you can still care about them. You can let go of your past, but you can still find ways to honor it. It just doesn't mean that you have to be wrapped up in it. It doesn't mean that you need to be there 24/7. I think there's a way to live your life where you're moving forward while honoring your past. And I want to know what Dave has to say about that too.
Well, you touched on something that was really important. A lot of these things go all the way back to childhood, right? And when you're talking about having to lie, let's say to avoid getting a whooping, there's a very real fear there, and you don't have other options, right? Because your parents or whoever is in charge of you, they're bigger than you. They're gonna, kind of take power over the situation, and that fear is very real, right? So that becomes a pattern, and then it gets repeated, and then when you become an adult, you find yourself still falling into that pattern, but there's nobody who's going to beat you up anymore, right? So you're kind of reliving the same pattern as though you're standing in front of somebody who's like 3 times your size, and right. So that's where, as an adult, you can look back on it, and even though the fear comes up automatically, right, you can say, wait a second, this isn't the same situation as that. This is going back to all the way when I was little. This has nothing to do with now, right? So now that's where you can start making a choice where, okay, I feel afraid in the situation, but I know where that fear is coming from because I know, where I come from. Yeah. I'm gonna live with that fear and move forward anyway, and do the thing anyway, right? And then you'll find that when you start doing that, the fear becomes less, and then you also get the benefit of getting on the other side of it and saying, wow, I did that thing that I was afraid of, and it turned out really good, right? So the next time it comes up, it becomes easier to make that choice, and the flutter of fear might still be there.
Yeah, most definitely it's there.
But you do it anyway.
You want to add anything to that?
I would say, going to fear. I think that you got to get with individuals that you feel safe around, and be able to share that stuff. So find your group, find your community. It may not be that same community that you came from. By the sounds of it, it probably isn't.
Yeah,
but,
most definitely.
But find you a group of people that you can confide in and you can build with.
Yes, sir. Thank you guys for coming.
Appreciate you, man. Anybody else want to jump up and ask? Yeah, great. Yeah, jump up there, man. Don't be shy.
I was pulled here, Rob the Barber, man. Inspiration. Thanks for coming out. I was in the booth working. Big ups, man. I heard you were a barber too, so I had to come up. God pulled me over here, man, and appreciate your story, bro. It hits me, touches my heart, starts racing. I know it's real. I can feel you, man, and I'm on my journey now, and it's rough. A lot of distractions. You know what I mean? And if I can shed light on that, man, and this refocused me. Yeah. And I just wanted to come say I appreciate that, man, and thank you for coming, bro.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, jump up, man. What's your name?
My name's Brian.
Brian.
Your name's Cordero, was it?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm glad. This is my first time. I came from Tucson today. I was at the PRC group. I was over there on the yard there. Got out. It didn't work out there. I got on the 29th. I was hoping to get myself together over there, but listening to you, I guess you kind of inspired me. Tonight, you know, hearing that you've educated yourself. I kind of like, you know, I'm a wise person, but I'm unwise. So, you know, it's good to learn, you know, hear that, you know, people can learn.
Yeah.
I happened to be in Phoenix back in 2015. Been homeless since 2002. So there was a book. I think the guy's man's Kevin Baker, Shivers Row. I think you were speaking about Mountain Little. Was that the same man?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a book. It's they written it. And I think he was into crime. There's a different man. Okay.
No,
so
yeah.
Okay. So. But anyway, so I happened to be in 2015. I happened to, you know, be in Athens, Arizona. Later got picked up by the Deer Valley Police Department after telling I didn't have a warrant. But I have, you know, I've been in California, went through something similar. You know, ended up with 2 years. The judge told me I ended up doing 5 years. Now I was supposed to get 12, got out 9.7, so they let me out early. But hearing you, you know, that's kind of a great thing. So I tried to teach myself in there. I missed a big time opportunity. You know, I got stuck in there 9.7 years. I could have been learning, could have been in school, but they just weren't looking for me at the time. You know, it wasn't such a bad thing. But I just wanted to thank you for coming out. So it, you know, kind of gives me a chance to start to, you know, somehow, you know, give back community. You know, it starts here. You know, I guess they got a thing called networking, and it kind of works somehow. So I'm just glad you came out. You know.
Thank you, brother. Thank you, brother. And as we had set up here, it's never too late, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, feel free, guys. We're here for you. So jump on the mic. What's your name?
My name's Armand.
What's up, Armand?
How's it going? First of all, I wanted to, you know, recognize you. I definitely can relate to your story. I want to thank you guys for coming out here. But the question that I had, you guys spoke something about transitional characters. And I wanted to just ask if you could possibly give us like some first steps to intentionally start making that change into becoming a transitional character, so that way we kind of have a starting point
on what it is. So yeah, I'll jump in. I think the first thing that has to happen is the belief that you're that person. And here's how you know you're that person. Life doesn't make sense. What's happening around you doesn't make sense. The things that you're experiencing day in and day out, they don't make sense to you. And you're somebody who's just trying to make sense of the world. You're trying to make sense of what's happening around you. So that knowledge, okay, that's me. That to me is the first step. I am that person. And then what are the steps moving forward, right? Now it just becomes about, in my opinion, and I want all of your thoughts on this. For me, it's about now I step into the healing, because the most important thing that I can do as the transitional character is get myself right, to deal with the demons in my past, to go to work on some of those things that I know have been shaping me and molding me and turning me into the person that I am. And I'll share just a quick story, and then we'll jump into this. When I was 23 years old, I was on the deck with my father, and my father went into something called sudden cardiac death, which means the first time that you find out you have a heart problem is the day you die. I tried to save my dad's life, and I couldn't. He died in my arms. In that moment, I had a whole set of belief systems set up within me that I wasn't worried, or I wasn't worth enough, and I didn't know enough, and I wasn't very helpful. And so I started to carry that operating system into my life. And so when I talk about you got to do the work, you got to go to work on the demons, what I had to do is I had to wrestle with that demon and get back to a person who says, you know what, you do know enough. You are useful. You are helpful for people. And so that's my answer. My answer is the healing starts tonight. Like me getting whole starts tonight. The idea that I can be a different person tomorrow, it starts tonight. So that's my anecdote on that, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say as well.
I think it's important to realize that it's a process. Like you're not going to get it overnight, right? And the thing is, it starts with wanting it, right? So if you say, okay, there's been dysfunction in the family, and you know maybe you're starting a family. I don't want my kids to grow up the way I grew up, right? Like that's the first step. I mean, you can start looking for things. So if you have in mind a vision of the type of father that you want to be, just to use as an example, or the type of person that you want to be to your family. If you have a vision of what that's supposed to look like, you might not know how to get there, but start finding other people that are doing the thing that you're trying to do and use them as a mentor, or like ask them to mentor you. You know, it's not about having the answers, but it's about being willing to work the process and get closer to it. find people to model it. Yeah.
It's great advice. Cordero, anything on that?
I mean, just to kind of like, I guess, build upon what you guys just talked about, right? Understanding like, this is not what I want to do, right? Understanding that it's a process. And I would share for me, it was really, it was going through all of that and really being of service. Like, it was a dude told me one time, he said, man, what did he say? He said, you wash your hands when you clean other people's feet. He didn't say it like that. He said it in a different way. But the way he said, when he said that, it was kind of like, well, my hands are dirty, man. You mean? And so I would say, like, when you come to the understanding that you want to make a change, you want to do something different, and then you're well aware that it's a process, be of service to somebody.
Is that helpful? Yeah, appreciate it, man. That's a great question. Anybody else? Go for it. What's your name?
My name is John.
John, what do you want to know?
You said, you just mentioned that you wash your hands when you clean other people's feet. That gives me the thought that you have some Christian or biblical, spiritual words for us. If you can give us something to promote Jesus.
Yeah, Jesus had said, this is my favorite scripture. I think my man Coy got it. What is it? What's the scripture? Coy? He said, there's no greater love than to lay your life down for your friend. Yeah.
But I will add to that, like, people say that kind of stuff all the time.
Yeah.
They say, I would die for this person.
Yeah.
And what I want to challenge you is, yeah, but will you live for them?
Yeah.
Will you live for them? Will you do the work on yourself to turn the corner so that you can have the life that you want for everybody else that has your last name coming after you? Are you willing to do that? I get that you're so awesome that you'll die for me, but what would really impress me is if you would live for me.
Well, what I think about is also, Christ says, man, pick up your cross and follow me, right? I remember like the first revelation that I ever really received, right, from the Father was I was sitting in a hole. And it's a few different books that you read, right? You read the scriptures. You kind of got like another like cultural book, right? You got you a dictionary, an encyclopedia. You're working on your vocabulary. You want to be nice with your words, yada yada, right? For some reason it just came to me like look up cross in Webster's dictionary, and I remember the second definition of Webster's dictionary for the word cross was trials and affliction. Christ says, pick up your cross and follow me, right? Pick up your trials and your affliction. I'm like, my whole life is trials, is afflictions. And follow him. And so I was like, okay, of course, if you're familiar with the scripture, Christ is the truth, the way, and the life. That led me to really kind of delve into my background, right? To understand that, what, man, I've been told a lie, and because I've been told a lie, I've been living a lie, right? Has led me on the wrong path, right? On the wrong way, which has caused me to live a life that the quality of life that I don't want to live. And so, right, and then if you were to just think about just, how it goes, right, Christ took his cross, right, and took it to Golgotha. Golgotha is the Aramaic for skull. During that time, I was also kind of like delving into different, like the etymology of different words, right? We talk about like souls and what that means. Psychology, doc, is the study of the mind. Soul kind of stems from that. These are all similar words, the study of the mind. And, if you're familiar with the story, right, the greatest story ever told, Christ wasn't murdered, right? Christ gave himself up and resurrected 3 days later, right? A new person. That's what happens when you come to Christ. And so I would say, man, whatever it is you got going on, take your life, take your trials, take your afflictions, pick up your cross, right? And take it to the skull and give yourself up. Give yourself up. And so I guess I'd like put my Arthur call right there, right? Give yourself up, right? We'll wait for
I want to just kind of double down on what you just said. Somebody told me once upon a time that the 4 most powerful words in the English language are, will you help me? And I think a lot of us are afraid to ask for help because we're afraid of what we're going to look like. We're afraid of what people are going to say if we ask for help. We're afraid that in that moment we don't look hard or like a man, right? And I would challenge that thought, and I would say that I believe that the most successful people, and I am learning this on my journey, and I'm sure the two of you have already learned this too, and maybe there's people in this room that have already come to learn this as well. The moment I started asking people for help, and the moment You know, what's that old saying? A wise man knows he knows nothing, right? And so if in that moment where I was like, look, I don't have the answer, and I really need somebody to guide me on this journey, that's when my life started to look completely different. And not just look different, but most importantly, it started to feel different. I started to wake up in the morning and be like, I like this guy. And I noticed that, you know, I was getting better with my kids and my wife and my connections with my friends. And there was all this really cool trickle-down effect that started to happen. Once I just raised my hand and I said, I can't do this by myself. I need some help. I need people smarter than me. I need people that know things that I don't know, but I've got to get some help.
Well, and Cordero, you were saying too about people lying to you and believing lies. Sometimes it's not even just lies too, but it's just you came to the wrong conclusion because of the circumstances. And I think having the courage to ask questions, like if you have a negative belief, like, hey, I'll never be able to do that, there's no point in even trying. Well, wait a second. You can question that. Say, well, what makes me think I can't do it? What would happen if I did do it, right? So you don't have to just accept on face value the thoughts that pop into your mind. You can ask questions about them and say, is that really true? You know, I grew up learning this or believing this. Is that actually even true? And once you open that door, then you can start, you know, trying to learn more and maybe look at some different perspectives and see if there is a different path forward.
I love that. Yeah, I always remind people that when I'm working with them, I say the average human has 60,000 thoughts a day. 60,000 thoughts a day. They all can't be right, right? Some of that's bullshit. Some of it is just passing through. And it really is up to us to figure out what's real and what's not. Here's what I want to do. I want to say thank you to you, Cordero. If you're down for it, stick around a little bit longer. I want to give everybody just a chance to stand up, move around, go to the bathroom, grab a drink of water, and then we have planned about a 35 to 40-minute workshop for everybody here, and it's really meant to be more of a facilitation, right? Like, this is going to be a discussion where we just come together as the men and women who are in this room, and we just open up with each other. Dave and I want to work you through a little bit more of the transitional character element. We want to work you through a little bit more of the forgiveness element. And maybe one other thing if we get to it. Yes. Jump on up here, man. Go for it. Take your time. Grab that microphone. And what's your name?
My name is Casey.
Gracie, what do you want to know?
Casey.
Oh, Casey, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a lot of people say Casey, crazy, and all that. Yeah, man. I'd like to appreciate, you guys all coming out tonight. This is my first time, coming to a podcast. It was always on my tablet, you know what I mean? Until I broke and lost my tablet, sold my tablet, all that, just, for a little money, you know what I mean, for a little bag of chips and stuff. But, I'd like to ask Mr. Holmes a question. Hey, man, we all go through like a lot, man. Trials and tribulations.
I got you.
But I want to say, a little nervous here. I want to ask you, say, you became this person right here today, becoming successful in a lot of things in your life. But if you were given one choice to change something in your past, what would it be?
I guess the cliche answer, Casey, would be, nothing, right? But that's what it would be. But I mean, the reality is it would have to be with my kids. It would have to be with my kids. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe spending more time with them. But I mean, that would be it. It involved my kids because I feel like those are the most important people in my life. And again, like I shared earlier, they didn't ask to be here. After my life is over, I get another 10 years, right, to spend with them.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's kind of past, but future. And so I get that would be it, just to answer the question, because again, the cliche would be like nothing.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you, Casey.
Yeah, the craziest thought too just now, man. Like I was thinking, like, hey, man, you get to ask some questions. You know what I mean? And that's the first thing I was thinking. Like, hey, I'll ask this dude this question. I'm gonna see what he's gonna say. You know what I mean? In the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, man, like, you know what I mean? I asked myself that question. The same answer, bro. My kids. You know what I mean? All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right,
I love
appreciate you,
that.
Casey.
Yeah, thank you, Casey. I appreciate that. So again, everybody, well, let's take 10. Grab a drink, grab some water, and then when we come back, we'll be up here again. I think Catherine's in the crowd, and she wasn't able to make it. Okay, great. Well, then we've got this panel for you. We'll work you through a little bit of a discussion, and maybe we all walk out of here feeling a little bit different tonight. But I want to leave everybody with this final thought, which is this, and it's very simple. If you want to change your life, you have to change your life. There is no shortcut. There's no fast-tracking way to make change happen. It just is the process that Dave talked about. It starts with just, they call it habit stacking, building little at a time. You know, I work with youth athletes a lot, and they say, oh, I want to do this big thing, and I say, let's just do this little thing. And then once we're there, then we'll do the next thing. And so I don't know what that looks like for you, but figure that piece out. What's the little change that you can make today that'll make tomorrow a little bit different? And I think if you can do that, then you're going to find yourself in a place where you feel really good about everything that's happening. So again, many thanks to you, Cordero Holmes, for being our guest tonight. Thank you to Dr. David Lycan. And honestly, thanks to everybody who came out here tonight to be a part of this podcast. We'll see everybody in 10 minutes, okay?
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1, to help you feel less alone. 2, encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3, when you're ready, share your story with us.
Find Learn from People Who Lived It wherever you get podcasts. Search it using all one word. Learn from People Who Lived It.